Salvador, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, is warning it could happen. And the president's Make America Healthy agenda takes shape, and it involves a huge slash to the federal health budget. Tonight on Laura Coates Live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Omar Jimenez in for Laura. A federal judge going toe-to-toe with the Trump administration is raising the stakes, and tonight the Trump administration is punching back. The judge at the center of the legal fight over President Trump's deportation plans, James Boasberg, is out with a new ruling tonight. He writes, quote, "Probable cause exists to find the government in criminal contempt." And it's all related to his orders last month telling the Trump administration to turn back planes carrying migrants to El Salvador. Now, Trump's team didn't comply, or at the very least, that didn't happen. Then the DOJ stonewalled Boasberg when he tried to find out why. He says, quote, "The court has given defendants ample opportunity to explain their actions. None of their responses has been satisfactory." Now, shortly after Boasberg's filing, the Trump administration moved to appeal, and all of this is happening as the president's team fights a case on another separate but related front involving a man on one of those flights to El Salvador. Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, the administration has admitted he was mistakenly deported. He's now locked up in El Salvador's CECOP prison, and Attorney General Pam Bondi says he's going to stay there for good.
He is not coming back to our country. President Bukele said he was not sending him back. That's the end of the story. If he wanted to send him back, we would give him a plane ride back. There was no situation ever where he was going to stay in this country. None. He's from El Salvador, he's in El Salvador, and that's where the president plans on keeping him.
And the Department of Homeland Security also released documents on Abrego Garcia's background, which the White House press secretary laid out.
When Kilmar Abrego Garcia was originally arrested, he was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money covering the ears, mouth, and eyes of presidents on various currency denominations. This is a known MS-13 gang symbol of hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Abrego Garcia was also arrested with two other well-known members of the vicious MS-13 gang.
Now, CNN has gone through the documents, and our chief legal correspondent, Paula Reed, says it doesn't prove he's a member of MS-13.
It makes reference to the fact that a police informant said Abrego Garcia was part of MS-13, but then he was denied bond, citing this accusation. They appealed, but in an immigration bond hearing, the detainee has the burden of proof to show that they are not a flight risk nor a danger to the community, and he failed to meet that burden. But that is not a conclusive finding that he was a member of MS-13.
And Abrego Garcia's lawyers also point out he's never been convicted of any crime, gang-related or otherwise. But regardless of all of that, his background and otherwise, they argue the issue is his due process rights were violated and that the Trump administration ignored the law. The Trump administration outside the courtroom has largely focused on Abrego Garcia's background in this case, putting out that Abrego Garcia's wife filed a temporary protective order against him in 2021.
The court ordered that the respondents committed the following acts of abuse. Once, in May of 2021, assault in any degree. And on May 4th of 2021, he punched and scratched his wife, ripped off her shirt, and grabbed and bruised her. This is from a court in Maryland.
Now, Abrego Garcia's wife isn't denying she filed the order, but said this in a statement to CNN. "After surviving domestic violence in a previous relationship, I acted out of caution after a disagreement with Kilmar by seeking a civil protective order in case things escalated. Things did not escalate, and I decided not to follow through with the civil court process. That is not a justification for ICE's action." But the Trump administration might be betting this will influence the court of public opinion because it's been part of their attack line on Democrats, for example, for defending Abrego Garcia in this case. Democrats like Senator Chris Van Hollen, who traveled to El Salvador to try to meet him. He wasn't able to, but he did speak with El Salvador's vice president, and he asked him why Abrego Garcia is being held in prison without any corroborated evidence, as the judge in this case has characterized it, that he's a member of MS-13.
His answer was that the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El
All right, a lot to talk about here. Joining me now, CNN analyst Zolan Kano Young. We talked about the pronunciation earlier. Maryland State's attorney of the county where Abrego Garcia lived, Aisha Braveboy, and former communications aide to Senator Lindsey Graham, T.W. Rigby. Thank you all for being here. Aisha, I want to start with you because, look, Judge Boasberg clearly frustrated about what he calls a willful disregard of his orders. But who can he actually hold responsible for criminal contempt here? Is it lawyers or is it other members of the Trump administration?
You know, it's anyone who is helping to subvert the rule of law. I mean, it really is about our Constitution. We are really at a constitutional crisis right now. We have three co-equal branches of government, each designed to have a check on the other because we live in a democracy. And so we don't live in a dictatorship. When the courts have issued an order, we have to follow it. We may not always like it, but it is the law. And unless you want to appeal the decision of the court, you must follow it. And even if you are appealing, and in this case, it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Think about that. The Supreme Court, the top and highest judicial power and authority in our land, said that this man should be returned to the status he was at prior to this administrative error. And this administration refuses to do it.
And of course, the question from the Supreme Court was what does facilitate mean versus effectuate? And you know, TW, one of the things I think is interesting here is, look, you've got these proceedings happening inside court. You've also got this environment happening outside court as well. And Judge Boasberg even cited in particular a New York Post headline on the order to return the deportees to the U.S. The president of El Salvador responded, "Oopsie, too late," with a laughing emoji, and that was reposted by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Look, you work in comms, or you have. I'm sure you're constantly weighing whether public communications could influence judicial proceedings. Do you see anything wrong with that repost? And I will just wonder what you make of sort of the inside the courtroom, outside the courtroom relationship that you're seeing right now.
Yeah, well, I think Mr. Garcia's case is now fully in the hands of President Bukele because Mr. Garcia is an El Salvadorian citizen that is his president. Look, for Judge Bowden, I can only simply say, and I am not a lawyer, so I won't hear a BS here next to an esteemed lawyer to my right, but I will tell you that I do believe that President Trump is on at least some sound footing with the Alien Enemies Act. And just as a history buff viewer of how this thing played out reader of how this thing played out in 1798, I've been shocked at how misread the original law and the intent for the law that was written. So I think we'll play out. As for the tweet, of course, it's tongue-in-cheek. That's sort of what he's trying to become known for as a younger leader of a Central American nation. And you know, the fate of Mr. Garcia now hangs in his hands. And the Supreme Court, as you just mentioned, didn't really make a firm judgment that they had to go bring it back. It was a matter of facilitation with the country of origin of that individual.
And you know, the Judge Sinas has talked about sort of the Trump administration's actions sort of flying in the face of the plain meaning of facilitate, and that seems to be among the many tensions they've had in this particular case. But Zolan, look, the White House says they're going to appeal. What sort of happens next here on the Boasberg side of things?
Well, on the Boasberg side of things, we have a blueprint that he's laid out here, right? I mean, he has basically threatened contempt proceedings. Unless the administration does what essentially he's been asking for the last month, which is to provide these migrants a chance to contest, a chance for due process, a chance to contest this implication of the Alien Enemies Act, and also just to present some basic facts of what happened when those flights left on March 15th. Thus far, you see the administration stonewall those efforts. But what I think is interesting is he didn't just threaten contempt proceedings. He also said that if they don't comply with that, then he would, as an option, he could refer this to the Justice Department. And then say the administration directs the Justice Department to drop that. Well, then he actually would look at this carve-out that would basically allow him to appoint his own prosecutor as well. So there is a whole blueprint of actions now that Boasberg is saying that he could take here, which I think shows just how far we've gotten in terms of the executive branch and the judicial branch really clashing against each other on this case. On the subject of Bukele, as it pertains to Mr. Abrego Garcia, one thing that's interesting just in terms of the facilitating order in the Supreme Court order, Well, the administration in that Oval Office meeting the other day made it clear they think that this is on Bukele. Today, when Senator Van Hollen went to El Salvador, he says he spoke with a government official who said, well, we're keeping him because the U.S. is paying El Salvador $6 million to take these migrants in as well. So you have two sides that are pointing at each other. And while the Supreme Court may have said facilitate, they also did point out that they feel this person should be returned. Yeah. And it's worth just to take a step back and remind folks, 2019, after he went through his immigration proceedings, he was given a withholding of removal status, which does say that that judge felt that deporting him back to El Salvador specifically, that he could face torture or violence. And that's why they shielded him from deportation at that time. That's why you had the administration saying that it was an error to deport him.
I think there's a big caveat there because she cited harm from gangs, rival gangs, thus implying he had affiliations with gangs here, which is an underlying point of this entire thing, of this entire case. So, we can say, oh, he wasn't a part of MS-13, even though courts ruled he was, and then in the state orders,
an informant.
The courts have never ruled that Mr. Garcia was a part of MS-13. So I think that's one of the issues that has been out there. People have been just using terms like this is a gang member in a way to jade people against Mr. Garcia. And it's not just Mr. Garcia, it's any brown person that gets deported. And that's the biggest issue because not everyone who comes here is a member of a gang.
And Aisha, I actually just want to ask you on this point because, look, you are the state's attorney in the county where Abrego Garcia lived prior to this, and Attorney General Pam Bondi released the 2019 arrest record from PG County, where it cited a confidential source saying Abrego Garcia was a gang member, describes a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie with symbols they say indicate gang culture. And just to note, this is from the 2019 when he was given the removal order. It doesn't necessarily show current affiliation. The bottom line, look, your office works with law enforcement all the time to deal with cases. When it comes to a police informant, how do you determine the credibility of a single informant like this?
Absolutely. Well, look, this was information that was entered into a system called GangNet, which has since been disbanded. That information was entered in by an officer who interviewed Mr. Garcia at the time that he was arrested, but he was not charged with a crime. He was handed over to ICE because he was not in the country legally, and then he went through an ICE proceeding. After that proceeding, he remained in the country, and he had a status, the withholding from removal status. He then worked in this country. He'd been here and has never been charged with any crime in Prince George's County or anywhere else in this country as we know it. Now, I work with law enforcement all the time, and I have been very hard in prosecuting gangs, and I've prosecuted many gang leaders and offenders in our community, and we have gotten really great results. But he is not someone who has ever been a target of an investigation or a crime that we prosecuted in our county. So whether he had any affiliations or relationships or knew people who were in gangs, his actions since he's been here with respect to, criminal laws, criminal wrongdoing, it's just not here, except the fact that he was not here legally. Other than his status as someone who's undocumented, there are no other crimes for which he was charged.
So you're saying for a sort of pinning of a label of a gang member, you would have wanted to see a further step.
Well, just like in case, we have to present evidence, we have to present facts. We can't just draw conclusions, right? And so I think that's why this case is very interesting. Whether he's a gang member or not, we don't know. And the fact is, no one has ever, quote unquote, proven that in the court of law. There was an informant who provided information that was entered into a GangNet system, okay, that again has now been disbanded because there were issues with that system. And so this individual, again, has never been charged with a crime in Prince George's County. So he was never on our radar for committing an offense in our jurisdiction or in the state.
I gotta leave there. You have a quick word?
Yeah, I would simply say that he was given a deportation order originally, so that the evidence must have held up to some degree. And secondly, that informant arrested with cited also his rank and his nickname in the gang, and that would clearly carry weight and then led to the reprisal.
But again, he was allowed to remain in this country under the prior Trump administration. This is in 2019. So if he were a vicious gang leader, then he should have been deported at that time.
The Alien Enemies Act does cover that.
And that, of course, is the question that is playing out in two separate cases, separate but related. And I have a feeling whether it goes to a special prosecutor level in the Judge Boasberg spot or wherever it goes in the other case, I'll have it back. More to talk, Albert. All right,
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, everyone.